You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Justin Fields got the all clear to return as the Chicago Bears starter. And now from here on out for the rest of the Bears season, no matter what happens, it is all about him. This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lorin Cox. I'm an analyst for Pro Football Focus, and I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook. You can join the Locked On Bears Facebook group for even more Bears talk. And make sure you click that subscribe button on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today and every day. We're here for you 5 days a week. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at StatHero, the first of its kind daily fantasy sports platform where it's you versus the house in head-to-head fantasy matchups, winner take all. Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon and use our promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. On the show today, we find out the full extent of Justin Fields' rib injury, how he's feeling, what he's anticipating dealing with against the Green Bay Packers and moving forward, and just kind of generally where he is entering this return to the starting lineup in a big primetime matchup against the division rivals. Then we'll sort of look a little bit more closely at what he needs to do, what we want to see from him, what the Bears are seeing from him, and what we'd like to see from him throughout the rest of the season, where that growth and where that development needs to come for Fields. And we'll wrap up with the other top injured draft pick. We heard from Teven Jenkins for the first time since his injury. He played last week, if you might have missed it because it was only on field goal teams. But hey, he's made his NFL debut with his back injury. We'll check in on what that whole process has been like and how he's handling just staying on the bench, maybe for the rest of his rookie year. But let's start with the other rookie season that we're most focused on and that we're most excited about and that means the most right now, and that is one Mr. Justin Fields. Got the all clear. Matt Nagy officially named him the starter against the Green Bay Packers, kind of reiterated that he wasn't losing the job to Andy Dalton again. Like, this was only purely about, is Fields healthy and ready to go? And now Dalton also dealing with a finger injury on his left hand. He might not be able to go, and it could be Nick Foles as Justin Fields backup on Sunday against the Packers. But more importantly, it is going to be Fields, and Fields recovering from the cracks. And I think he ended up saying 3 of his ribs were cracked. He's been medically cleared, and he's kind of, more or less downplaying the extent of the injury and kind of, brushing it off at this point. But I kind of get the impression, despite him trying to tell you everything is fine, that maybe not. He's definitely not going to be 100% at this stage of the season, but he's not going to let it kind of slow him down or really affect too much of what he wants to do as a quarterback.
How did this compare to with what you went through in January, and how did what you went through previously inform you as you were going through this?
Yeah, I think January was way worse by far, and it's the same thing pretty much. So not really that much of a difference, just not as much pain.
January, how long did it take you to feel normal again?
Long time. A long time. I don't even know. Probably
Plural?
I had to sit out after the season, probably 4 or 5 weeks. I just didn't do anything to let it fully heal. But again, it was way worse. So
is that a hip thing or a rib thing?
it was both, because January was my hip and my ribs, but this is just my ribs. So yeah.
What was the specific impact or contact that caused it? Was it the hit from?
I'm not sure. I still don't know. I don't even think it happened on that play because I didn't get hit that hard. So I think it happened before that last play where I came off. Then I tried to get up and run, and it was hurting to run. So I'm not even sure what play it happened on.
The guy on that play apologized.
Yeah, he thought it was that play.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't even think it was that play. So yeah.
How are you feeling pain-wise right now, and is the injury, do you feel, limiting you at all?
I feel good. Like I'll be ready to play.
So I think that last answer from Fields said more than the words, right? Reading between the lines, that the question was, how do you feel? And what he said was, I feel good. I feel like I'll be ready to play, which is not the same as saying no pain or feeling 100%. Just that he's good and he's ready to play, and that's very, very different. And so I think it speaks a lot to Justin Fields' toughness. That and the comparison there at the very beginning, comparing the rib injury he's dealing with now compared to the injury he had at the end of his college career, playing through that in the playoffs for Ohio State, and how he felt like that was so much worse than what he's had to deal with now with the Chicago Bears. I think that does in some ways help, that not only has he been through this type of situation before and played through an injury that was worse, because as he said, it involves some hip in addition to the rib, which in terms of NFL quarterbacking, so much of your power from your throw comes from your hips, and that part of your core is where the force is really generated. It starts in your feet, but your feet is what allows you to get the most force out of your core, and then it transfers up through your shoulders and into your arms. And so that's sort of that's why it's so critical and why it's so impressive the way Fields was able to battle through that and still play at a high level last year for Ohio State. And so now this is, not that this is easy by any means, but comparatively, it should be less of a struggle for Fields, and it leaves me less concerned comparatively that he's kind of done this before and still played well. So obviously I'm concerned about him taking another hit. And that was one of the things he said later in his press conference, that he's going to try and be more careful, especially right away, to avoid hits and try and take fewer than he might have before, just given that the injury has some of that pain and some of that risk to it. But I don't know that I'm worried about that drastically changing. I think he's going to think of that more in terms of running in the open field as opposed to standing in the pocket. I am curious to see if it speeds up the delivery a little bit more, but that has also been part of the development process for Fields, is maybe almost wanting to speed up some of the delivery. And of course, you don't want to artificially have him be running through plays too quickly and hurting the offense as a result. But that's one of the things the Bears kind of point to as a part of where they have seen some growth from him. And it's more about knowing when to get rid of the ball quicker and process things quicker versus when you can and should hold on to the ball longer. We'll get into some of this nuance of Justin Fields' development and where we want to see more and better, and what this final quarter plus of the season should bring for the Bears rookie quarterback next on Locked On Bears. No one plays daily fantasy sports to lose. Of course, winning feels so much better, but traditional fantasy sports are a long-term losing proposition because you never know exactly who or what you're up against. But StatHero is the first of its kind daily fantasy sports platform where it's you versus the house in head-to-head fantasy matchups, and of course, winner take all. So StatHero, what they do is they show you the house lineups, the lineups you're going to be playing against. You see them first before you play, and then you can handpick the team you want to face them one-on-one. It's kind of a never-before-seen innovation of fantasy sports and sports betting hybrid kind of in between. And it's got StatHero players clocking odds that are over 4 times better than traditional daily fantasy sports because you're not competing against thousands of experts or unknowns. StatHero puts you in control of your fate. You're in control of the stakes. You decide how much you're going to play for. And StatHero has no choice but to take it because they're daring you to beat them. Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon and use our promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon, promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% match. stathero.com/lockedon, promo code LOCKEDON. Terms and conditions apply. I'm curious to see how Justin Fields is able to apply what he's learned so far this season as a starter, what he's learned back on the bench while injured, watching from the sideline. One of the things he had talked about was just kind of picking up on some more of the nuances and really getting to spend a lot of time with Nick Foles, watching Andy Dalton, and then also being able to talk to Dalton about what happens on the field and what he sees on the field. And not that it was some, great revelation being back on the bench. There was this argument of maybe Fields needs to sit down and get more time on the bench. And Fields basically kind of, he wasn't asked that directly, but basically kind of said I learned some stuff, but I need to be out there to really learn. The main thing to really get better and have that improvement is on the field, which is kind of the point we've been talking about all season long here in the Locked On Bears podcast. From before the regular season starts, he needs to play to get better. Some quarterbacks need to sit. Maybe Mitch Trubisky could have needed to sit a little bit more. Some quarterbacks come in a little bit more raw and need the more of that mental processing on the sideline. Field is more in that, where he gets it from Ohio State and he's running a similar offense, but he needs those reps with his teammates, and he needs to work on his footwork, for example, and he needs to continue to sort of master the offense and master a bunch of these, the sort of, again, the little things, because we talk a lot about how Justin Fields has made some of the hard things look easy, but sometimes it's been some of the simple things that have been a little bit more difficult than they should be, or just that's where we're seeing some of the mistakes, and that's where he really, I think, just needs that time and that experience. And I thought Matt Nagy did a good job of sort of encapsulating where they've seen a lot of that growth from Justin Fields so far, to kind of give us a sense of where he's picking back up from as he returns to the starting lineup.
Beyond what Justin did in the second half at Pittsburgh, what signs can you point to, maybe from the practice field or whatever, in the last 4 or 5 weeks, where you say, you know what, we are seeing progress in these areas?
Yeah, I always go back to the practice habits, his tempo in practice, completions, balls, the footballs, being completed and not on the ground, and then taking that to the game where his decision making, the ball's out. So like if we have a drop back, it's 3-step timing, ball's out. Growth from early on in the season, right? We have a 5-step timing, it's a hitch throw, right? Ball's out. If there's a play where it's a progression where he goes 1 to 2 and he knows that 3 is a check down, it's not there, right to the run, right? He takes off, uses his legs. That stuff has happened faster. It's not so much of a delay, and that's normal. And that's the growth that I've seen with him. And he was starting to really get into that. And then on top of that, I think he also puts his stamp on certain plays, whether it's a special throw, whether it's a great run in certain situations. That's the growth that we felt, on top of just being able to make quick decisions in a normal first and second down play.
So I think those are some of the, talking about making the easier things look easy, or making the simpler things less difficult, right? In terms of getting rid of the ball quickly and being able to sort of know sometimes when you do need to take the check down or go to the easier plays. And it's like, you don't want to, put a cap on or limit or hamstring Fields anyway by you taking away or discouraging the big playability and some of the different things that make him special. And that's what Matt Nagy kind of talked about at the end there, of like, him putting his stamp on plays. You still absolutely want him to do that. But, there are occasionally plays or throws or routes where, it's a quick curl to the sideline, which is frustrating in this offense, that how often Matt Nagy runs curls. There was I don't remember who it was on Twitter, posted a thing of Allen Robinson's route, and he's like near the top of the league in percentage of routes that are hitch and curl routes. And I mean, it's frustrating how much that is a part of the Bears offense, but that's also not something that Fields does particularly well. So like, if you want to silver lining it a little bit, like, it is pushing Fields in that way, because that one of the frustrations, right away in the Cleveland game is that, and in the first couple of games for Fields, especially with Matt Nagy as the play caller right away, was that like it seemed like they were trying to make him to be this quick rhythm West Coast quarterback and really sort of, jam him as a square peg into the round hole of the offense. And it was Laser that kind of opened things up a little bit more to Fields' suit. But at the same time, like, you do want him to grow in that way, because those are, every quarterback has to be able to hit some of the quick throws. No offense goes completely without those. And not that Fields wasn't able to hit them at all, but just like being able to fire that off in rhythm. And because for Fields, it has been a lot from a issue standpoint in his footwork. It's something we've been kind of keeping tabs on, and we saw it be a bit more of a problem earlier in the season. And I'm curious to see how it sort of develops here in the second half of, or this sort of second stretch for him, that like sometimes he'll just, he won't properly step into one of those easy throws, because he'll just kind of, he'll be bouncing on his toes and just want to fire the pass off when he sees it, and not really actually, transfer the weight from the back foot to the front foot. Not that you want him to slow down per se, but just, do all the steps, right? Don't just arm it in there sometimes. And I think that's an area where I'm looking, not specifically on like curl routes, but just quicker throws from the pocket to be able to cut down on just those little ones where it's just sometimes inaccurate. And every quarterback is going to miss throws sometimes. And I'm not expecting Fields to be 100% accurate on all of his throws, but it's the little areas like that that should be the easier things. And it's sort of the easier things that Dalton tends to hit pretty consistently. Certainly not nearly all the time either. And Fields is getting already beyond a point like that on the easier stuff. And then of course, much better on the more difficult downfield stuff. But we've seen Fields execute perfectly throws that are extremely difficult on the run, outside of the pocket, rolling left, floating into the end zone exactly where it needs to be, or over the top on deep throws. Like, those are the really hard, rare, special NFL throws that we see Fields hit. And like those are the ones that you can't just teach somebody. You can't just sit somebody on the sideline and make them learn that. You know what I mean? He does that. And that's the wow stuff that has you so excited about Fields, even when the final stat line is 175 yards and maybe an interception or two, right? I mean, it's like he does the amazing. So like as he cleans up more of the simple, that should get you more of that base level, I mean, statistical production, which is overrated, not a worthwhile sort of thing to get caught up and hung up on. But I think that's sort of how you create that more full, big picture from Fields, is cleaning some of that stuff up. Some of that is footwork. And I do think a lot of it is just practicing and playing with his teammates, and being away from the injury certainly will not have helped in that department, but he has been able to practice obviously this week, and he was limited a bit, practicing some last week. He said he's not really anticipating being rusty because he has been able to practice. I think that's a good mentality to have, but I do think there might be some, again, more of that sort of timing stuff that he's just getting back on the same page with receivers, especially now that, receivers have been hurt and they've been calling up, Isaiah Coulter and getting a lot more Jakeem Grant in there, and Rodney Adams was playing last week. Like Fields hasn't been practicing with those guys, presumably all that much. Maybe Allen Robinson will be back for this game and you can sort of get things rolling a little bit more that way. But I also want to see more passing to David Montgomery and more of the running game, and not making Justin Fields have to be the hero at the end of the Pittsburgh Steelers game. And maybe the Packers game won't be a great example of that, because maybe Green Bay will be farther ahead. But I'm really excited to see how Fields responds facing the same team now for the second time, what he does differently based on, now he's more familiar with the Packers cornerbacks. He's faced them once before. He's not learning a brand new opponent all week. It's like, oh, I remember these guys. I remember these tendencies. Let's see, how might I be able to attack them slightly differently, knowing that they might attack him slightly differently as well, but being able to sort of respond and know and have a little bit more familiarity with the opponent, I would be very curious to see. And I certainly think having Fields out there makes the Bears, gives the Bears a much, I feel more, not more confident that the Bears will pull off an upset, but just that like he's much more of a wild card at quarterback than Dalton, to where never say never about beating the Packers on Sunday, whereas it felt less likely that you could have that spark with Andy Dalton. But I don't know. I'm curious to see whether or not the injury is going to be a real factor for Fields in this game, and puts another caveat on, okay, maybe this game isn't fully a reflection of where he is in his development. It's really been a season categorized by injuries for a lot of key Bears players, including one that we haven't gotten to really see much of yet. The offensive tackle Teven Jenkins made his debut last week, still sitting on the bench. We'll kind of check in on his back injury, how he feels now, and what he's getting from being on the bench as opposed to maybe trying to get in that lineup somewhere, next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our new friends at On Location. Super Bowl 56 at SoFi is less than 100 days away. I can't believe it. It feels like the NFL season's gone so fast, and now the big game all the way right around the corner. And On Location is the only place to score once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. They are the official hospitality partner of the NFL. So there's no funny business here, no backdoor deals. I mean, this is legit high-quality experiences that they put together. You get to select your exact seats for the Super Bowl and choose from just the most elite experiences, including an exclusive pregame celebration with legitimate NFL legends. There's, of course, 5-star hotels in Los Angeles and food by the great Wolfgang Puck. I've always wanted to try some Wolfgang Puck creations. Visit onlocation.com/SB56 for more information, or if you just search the words Super Bowl On Location, I'm sure you'll be able to find it. It's On Location, O-N, location, EXP.com/SB56, like Super Bowl 56, or search Super Bowl On Location. Looking at this Bears-Packers matchup in the sports betting world with our friends at BetOnline AG. It's been a heavily favored Packers matchup, and I don't know that the Justin Fields return is going to make a huge difference on the betting line, but if you want to bet on this game, betonline.ag is the place to do it. They've got all of our favorite props, odds, and lines more than ever before as football season gets us closer and closer to the playoffs. Plus, they've got basketball, soccer, hockey, tennis, baseball season when that comes back, plus boxing, UFC, and even your favorite Vegas casino games all online. So don't wait to take advantage of all of their amazing offers, including this one. Sign up today for a free account and enter our promo code LOCKEDON and you're going to receive a free 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. They'll literally give you extra free money to play with at BetOnline. It's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. We haven't seen Teven Jenkins start this season for the Bears. They have not opted to put him into the Bears starting lineup in lieu of Jason Peters at left tackle and Larry Borum at right tackle. And there's certainly a respect factor that has gone in there with Jason Peters being an established veteran who's played well, right? I mean, he hasn't certainly earned any type of major benching. There hasn't been that type of performance from him anytime recently. He's not a perfect left tackle, but he's certainly given the Bears some real stability there in recent weeks that has been reassuring and has helped things kind of shore up that spot where it was a real concern. And I thought, Larry Borum has been playing particularly well. I thought he played a lot better against the Cardinals than I had fears. How about that? We talked about on Friday's game plan show that like maybe they would be able to attack Larry Borum with the likes of Marcus Golden and Chandler Jones, but he really held up, I think, pretty well on that right side. We're seeing pretty good development from him. And so you don't want to bench him just to get Teven Jenkins in there because he needs the development too. Borum does, but it's tough because you want your second round pick, a guy who was a first round talent. You want to get Jenkins on the field, and he did play 2 snaps of field goal and special teams, but that doesn't quite feel quite the same. But we knew Jenkins coming out of the draft too, and the whole post draft interview process. He's a nice guy. He seems like a really genuinely kind of gentle giant human being off field, maybe a mean streak on the field, but we got a decent update on what it's been like. It's been over a full year between college and then the injury with Chicago, not playing in a game. And so he's kind of been making the most out of it, but it was good to kind of check in on what the back injury was like, how this whole process kind of fell apart, even from OTAs, maybe pushing it a little bit too much and finally getting back onto the field last week.
100%.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
If you were asked to start a game or play an entire game, you'd be good to go, cleared medically, the whole thing.
Yes, but that's entirely up to the coaches, though, of course. But it's up to them, and I trust their process of what they're doing and how they're handling the situation. And I'm just going to keep on going with what they tell me to do.
Do you see that as a possibility, like getting it? I mean, you mentioned the 2 snaps. Do you expect to get more, like, as an offensive lineman against Green Bay?
Personally, I'm still waiting to see how it all unfolds. I'm still right now backing up JP, and just being able to learn from him, as he's of course no secret that he's going to be a future Hall of Famer, of course, a great player, even great person, and just be able to learn and get the knowledge that he's sharing with us, just having that as an advantage as my career goes on. I feel that's a great thing for me.
Now, can you take us back to June? I guess whenever you started feeling those symptoms, and then like what exactly played out when you got here for training camp, and that I know you're trying to get back, and then you eventually had to go to the surgery option.
Yeah, well, there's many different things we did before the surgery route, of course, because that was our last resort. Did a couple things. I'm not trying to give you guys too much detail about everything, but ultimately, it was different symptoms than what was going on in college. It was a whole different situation, and what happened is I probably pushed myself out there a little bit faster now because had that urge to. I want to get back on the field. I don't care if it's just hurt, and maybe I did push a little bit too much and it made it a little bit worse, and then that's what happened. Ended up going on to get surgery.
Are you talking about during training camp or back in OTAs?
Yeah, training camp.
So did you start?
It kind of lingered between both.
Did you start going OTAs? Yeah. Okay.
So it seems like Jenkins, maybe pushed it a little bit more, but with an injury like that, it's not necessarily like it's not the same as like a broken bone where it's just when you got to heal. I mean, if it starts as sort of back soreness and some pain, that's how it was described early on to, you kind of push through pain in the NFL is kind of what he was getting at there. And maybe, as an eager rookie wanting to be out there, maybe pushed it a little bit, but, do you really know at that time that you are pushing it in a detrimental way? It's one of the sort of gray areas, I think, of football recovery. But he did say a little bit later on that he hasn't felt this physically good as he does right now since he was 18, coming out of high school into college. So he seems like he's in a very good place physically, which then makes you wonder, like, well, maybe they should try and get him out there. But until they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, they're certainly not going to, make a change with Jason Peters at left tackle because, again, he's the veteran Hall of Famer. I think I can make a pretty strong argument that, well, once they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, and really they should probably do it now, that Peters is a veteran who's here as a mercenary fill-in. He was a fill-in for Teven Jenkins. We kind of talked about this during the bye week that you respect the heck out of him, but hey, it's more important for the team to get Teven Jenkins out there eventually. And if your offensive line quality goes down slightly, getting Jenkins in there for Peters, I think there's a argument to be made there for development. I mean, unless you're really concerned about it hurting Fields' development, and that ends up being the most important thing. I don't think Jenkins is really going to get a lot from the special team snaps in particular. I do think he can get a lot from learning from and watching Jason Peters. Another one of those things where it's just physically, you do need to be out on the field against NFL quality pass rushers. And I know you're practicing against, Robert Quinn and it's not Khalil Mack, but Travis Gibson and some of those guys are still NFL quality players. But it's different when your quarterback can actually get hit and you actually have the pads on and are getting actually physical against an opponent that you don't really like, unlike your teammates. So it's he does. I think it'll be. I don't know if it's a shame if he never plays as his rookie season, but he'll definitely be missing something by if he ends up not playing on offense at all during his rookie season. And we talked before too that it's pretty rare that Jason Peters finishes a full 17 game season completely healthy and doesn't miss games. And so, maybe there's a chance an injury could happen there. I'm not wishing it on Jason. I want Jason to be successful and to have, the best health and all that stuff. It's just statistically speaking, he's had trouble staying healthy for full seasons, and you would expect at that age of his career. So maybe there's still an opportunity for Teven Jenkins to get out there, but it's clear that it is no longer a health or physical decision for the Bears, right? This is not them saying, oh, well, we don't want to put Jenkins out there because we don't want to give him a full load because we're concerned about the back. He says he feels great. Everything is cleared. He doesn't anticipate this ever being a problem again because the surgery really kind of cleaned up whatever was going on back there for him. So Jenkins is ready for full speed ahead. It's just a matter of when the Bears are ready for him to be full speed ahead in their offense. I think at point it probably is going to take an injury to one of the offensive tackle spots or maybe somewhere else, an injury somewhere to shift the offensive line to find a spot for Teven Jenkins in there. And we'll certainly keep a close eye out for when and where he might get some of those opportunities. Maybe he comes in at tight end the way Alex Bars did early in the season, and then he could at least block a real opponent. I wouldn't mind that. I mean, you don't want to throw him off too much from playing a tight end spot. Put him in on the goal line, that type of situation. I think you can maybe pull some little tricks up your sleeve to get him some snaps on the field. I hope the Bears get creative with it. I hope they find some ways to get him on the field. However they handle it, you can be sure we'll break it all down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure that you subscribe to keep up with all of our daily in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. We're free and available on all platforms, whether it's any podcasting service that you use or on the YouTube channel. Appreciate everyone who's been following along, liking and commenting on those videos. Thank you for making Locked On Bears your first listen today and every single day. Appreciate everyone who's been sharing their Spotify Wrapped with us as well. It's the Spotify end of the year. Shows you, how much you've been listening to a certain podcast, or it does all your favorite songs too. But specifically in the podcast, we had Scott Lane post in the Locked On Bears Facebook group. He listened to 153 episodes of Locked On Bears this year for a total of 4,516 minutes. Incredible. I mean, that is a great amount of listening. And then commenting on that, Stan Deutschev, I really apologize if I butcher your name there. He beat him out just barely 155 episodes for 4,599 minutes. So, I mean, it's really been incredible to see. Devin Boone commented with Locked On Bears as his top podcast on his list. Shane Walls commented with 181 episodes for 5,034 minutes. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, thank you so much for listening so much, for making me a part of your day, for making the Bears, for getting that Bears talk here. I hope it's a little bit something extra to help you get going, to keep you looped in on your favorite team, even when the team themselves are disappointing or hard to watch. I hope the podcast can be that treat, that to be the part of your Bears fandom that doesn't disappoint. And as always, I hope the Locked Bears podcast makes it easier for all of you to bear down.